Welcome to Business Connection. I'm Liz Spencer. I have a fascinating guest in studio with me. It's Anthony Trunnell, and he's the principal from Trunnell Insurance Services. Welcome.
It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. Now, insurance is so interesting. It's something that we don't want to always face, but things we need to know. But you're here to kind of bust some myths, so I think that's awesome. Because you're that guy that we meet, and you're the insurance agent, and we all have these questions. So I'm going to ask these questions that nobody wants to ask, but I will because you're the expert.
Okay.
So Anthony, tell me a little bit about the teen driver myth.
Well, I call it the teen driver myth. It's I get this all the time. We get it from people. Obviously, one of the main times when people are worried about their cost is when they've got that teenager rolling in, and they're worried how are they going to do. So we have people call up, and I get all the time. They say, "My friend told me that I don't need to add my teenager to the policy. They're automatically covered because insurance goes with the vehicle." And that is not true. That is not true. But I hear that a lot. I just heard it twice actually last week from two different people.
Right, because I would think that if I'm driving, I have to be insured for me driving no matter what car.
Correct. And it's written, actually, if you look at the policy, it's actually written into the language on there, and it says there's two things. Number one, any driver in the household has to be listed on the policy. And listed, I mean, they can be excluded or something, but their name has to be on there. Obviously, you wouldn't exclude a teenager. And secondly, any person who's operating the car on a regular basis. I mean, you could have a family member maybe who uses it sometimes. And when they say regular, I think they want it at least maybe once a month, at least consecutively, something like that. It's different if someone's in from out of town or something. See, that's where they're pulling it from. They're pulling it from if your mother comes into town and she's here for a weekend and she drives your car, she's covered because she's not a normal household member. It's just kind of a one-off situation. Right. But they've kind of turned it into this thing where you know, teens are just covered forever. And it's not true. And I'll tell you a statistic, actually. This is from USA Today about 6 or 7 years ago, actually. They said that for 1 out of 5 16-year-olds will get in an accident the first year that they get their license. So it's, that's why they're so expensive.
Right. Well, and 1 out of 5 will, and we hope it's just a minor, because nothing, I think, improves your driving more than a little accident.
A little reality.
A little reality check. But speaking of driving in accidents, more and more of us are getting into accidents because we're really a distracted driver, and we're not distracted by screaming kids or dogs, it's our phone. So talk to me a little about that.
Well, and that's segues the teenagers, because they're addicted to their phones. They love their phone. Well, I guess we all love our phones.
I love my phone.
But you know, that thing buzzes, and you've got to see what it is. Is it a text? Is it an update? Whatever it is. And it's kind of like a modern, I'd call it like a modern crisis, like DUIs used to be back in the 50s and the Mad Men days.
Right.
You know, when it was like, oh yeah, I had a three martini lunch, just drive back to the office, no big deal. The thing is with this, it's socially acceptable now, where people are like, oh yeah, I was just looking on my phone. I was just reading my phone while I was driving. And we tell us not to do it, but people still do it, and they do it in the morning, they do it during the day. It's not like a thing that just happens on Saturday nights or Friday nights. I mean, everybody's doing it. Right,
everybody's doing it, both teenage drivers, which it's particularly impactful with, and everyday drivers like me.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. But so this leads me to another question that you brought up, which was the personal umbrella, which I'm fascinated by. Do I need one?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm making a note right now.
Typically, yes, you do. You do.
Okay.
And I say, anybody in a neighborhood, if you own a house, you should have one. And it's weird, no one really brings these up.
And what is it?
Okay, so an umbrella policy, it's just, and it's funny when people see it, they'll be like, what's covered? Yeah. And it's like, well, it's an umbrella. They are in $1 million increments, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And it goes on top of everything. So if you have a car, house, typical and average policy average household is going to have 2 cars and a house.
Right.
Something like that's going to cost $200 a year for $1 million in coverage. Some companies are a little less, some companies are a little bit more, but it covers anything. It could be boats, motorcycles, rental properties.
So it adds. So say somebody is at my house and they fall, and an insurance claim is done. So my homeowners will do something, and then this will take it beyond that. Is that
correct? Your liability on your house would kick in first, and this would be secondary to go on top. So it's just in case. I mean, it's just one of those claims that's just everything lines up. All the wrong things happen at the right time. You know, I mean, it would be like you could hit. Let's say you hit like a healthy 18-year-old girl, right? And she's fine. What if that same person is like an 80-year-old, you know, elderly driver? I mean, you could kill them instead of just injuring them, and that's when something like that kicks in. So, and the reason why I say Naperville is because the average income here, I think, is what, 90, it's just under $100,000.
Right, you're right.
And income is an asset. If you're a homeowner, that's an asset, 401ks, stocks, things like that. But your income, I mean, people say, oh, I don't have any 401k, or I barely have any equity in my house.
Right, yeah.
But if you're, if you have an income, you can have, I think it's 25% of your income can be taken for the rest of your career until you pay off that debt, if there's some massive judgment against you.
Right, and this, I think you bring up a critical point that it's the umbrella, but it's really for personal liability.
Yeah.
Right, it's if somebody gets injured, that becomes a whole different deal than whether or not you wreck your own car on a tree or whatever. It's when people are injured or killed, it becomes a whole lot bigger deal.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's
bad. So on that cheer, what should I do? I'm driving along and I have an accident. It's what should I do?
You're not going to like it that I say this, but you should call the police. Even if it's a small accident, it's...
No matter what, I should
and
be
nobody
called.
Likes that. Nobody likes that.
It's really inconvenient. It's
Everyone's honking at you.
Yeah, it's honking. Well, especially if it's a minor thing, I feel bad bothering them.
Yeah. The thing is, if there's two cars involved, your insurance company and their insurance company is going to say you have to get a police report. So you're going to have to get one anyway. You're going to have to drive to the police station. And I've just seen times where, people... When the police are there, it's just nice. The evidence is sitting there. The police are there. Everybody's honest. They're in a little bit of shock, maybe a little adrenalized, and you get kind of the full story of what actually happened. I've just seen so many times where people, they go home, they go to bed, and they're thinking about it. What's going to happen to my insurance policy? And then all of a sudden the next day, their story changes. You know what I mean? They hear something different, they're not as agreeable, and all of a sudden it becomes a contentious situation. And I've had customers that they were the nice guy, and they ended up getting, hurt. I mean, maybe instead of getting 100% of the money back, they had to split 70-30. So then they had to end up paying for somebody else. So it's just, it's protection for yourself.
Right.
So do that. That's the big thing. And then you want to get like a rental car if your vehicle's not drivable, and call your insurance company.
I was going to say, I think before you even get there, I'm going to call the cops, and then I'm going to call you.
Yeah, well, and actually call us too, because sometimes depending on what happens, the accident, you may not want to call it into your insurance company right away.
Right.
But that's just too deep. There's too much going on with that.
Right. So that's, call the cops. And then this goes more to the homes, but you often hear market value versus replacement value.
Correct.
And not know where your house falls or what that even means. How do you know what you got?
I get that a lot. People ask us, because especially here recently, there's certain pockets still that like let's say downtown Naperville. That's a great example.
Right.
You can buy this little house in downtown Naperville for $400,000, $450,000, and it's 1,200 square feet. And the replacement cost on that thing is going to be what, $200,000 maybe, $250,000. But you bought it for $400,000, $500,000 because of the location. That's where a difference is for the market value. And then in other cases, there's just certain places where, I'm trying to think, areas, maybe Bolingbrook, Aurora, still seeing it, maybe Montgomery, where you can buy a house, a really nice house, for $300,000, $400,000, and then if you tried to build that thing, it's going to cost $100,000, $150,000 more. So people will buy a house and they'll be like, why are you insuring this house for so much money, when I only paid this much? And it's like, well, the language in your policy is written where if this thing burns to the ground, they have to rebuild it brand new, exactly the same as what it was, and it's going to cost a lot more.
Right. And I think that's the key thing, is that we're looking at just what we just paid for it, rather than, oh my gosh, if I had to replace the exact. Yeah. There's a lot that goes.
And new construction costs a fortune. It's a fortune.
It's a fortune, and you always end up building more.
Yeah, and I would say one little data. The values that we're seeing right now, if you want to know like how much your house is probably worth, for a regular construction right now, you're probably talking $160, $165 a square foot.
Wow.
When you're doing a build with an insurance company. Putting up track housing and everything is different, but if your house is burns to the ground, or tornado or whatever, that's probably what it's going to cost for that. For a semi-custom, you're probably talking 180 to 190, 195 a square foot.
Wow.
Once you start talking a custom house, you're in the low twos, and then it just depends on how nice it is. It goes way up.
That's interesting. We're going to have to go do some math.
So take your square footage and just multiply.
And really quickly, Anthony, if somebody is a current, we all have insurance, but they're thinking about, perhaps, taking a review of it, can they call your office and will you look at what they have and just chat them through and?
Yeah, well, we look at, typically we take what you have. I mean, especially if you want to give us the decks, and that lets us look at the language and everything and really make sure we've got it straight. And then, we'll go over it and we'll quote what you have, and then we'll talk about, what are the gaps.
Right.
Because typically there might be something, but people come to us too, and it's like, everything here looks great.
Right.
So.
Well, because there's lots to choose from, and I think when you're choosing insurance, you're choosing, not only the company that is insuring you, but the person who is going to help you make those decisions. So, Anthony, thanks for stopping by and giving us all the great information and being that expert that we all wanted to talk to.
Thanks. Like I said, it's great to be here.
All right. So nice. We wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more Business Connection next.